Hi everyone, Raphael Harry here, and you're listening to White Label American, a podcast where we hear stories from an immigrant or two, sometimes more. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of White Label American. Thank you all for joining us today, and shout out to everyone who's on the front lines. Shout out to our food and commercial workers, to our people working in healthcare, to our transportation personnel, and to everyone making life easier for those of us who have to stay at home. And shout out to our listeners and friends who are in countries and places that are in the developed, quote unquote, developed world to adapt to. It's a lot more difficult for you guys to, especially those who have to live on the daily income lifestyle. You know, it's a lot more difficult for someone to all of a sudden switch to a life of staying indoors where there's no system of welfare, or the government isn't necessarily providing the protection that's needed to take care of families and people. So my heart is always with you guys, and I always hope and pray that you guys will be able to navigate this time and period, and especially those who are in the communities that are not in the majority, the oppressed communities. It's times like this that is even much more difficult for them, because people will always use times like this to bring out their darker side. So my shout out to all of you, and hopefully, you know, if you're in a position where you can help others, be kind to others, and, you know, just reach out and help people. If you can help, you know, if you can, whatever you can do, you know, those of you who are in a position to help, helping doesn't just mean or isn't limited to donating money. You know, if you're in a position to donate money, then donate. But there are also other ways to help, and helping also involves spreading the right news, information, and not giving into conspiracies. That's also helping, and trying to prevent discrimination, which is very important, especially in this moment of time. So with that being said, we kick off today's episode with a special guest, a wonderful lady. Our guest today is Joy Chukwudi. She's a wonderful singer, has a fantastic voice. She's an aspiring artist, lives in Los Angeles, and aspiring to be on MTB, which is Making the Band. I never knew of that show until I came across you, and I was like, wow, okay, that's a great show, and I hope she makes it, you know, and we'll talk about that as the show goes on. And she's many more, but we'll just start with those, you know. So she's an aspiring artist, great voice, and fantastic personality. So welcome on the show, Joy. How you doing
Thank
today?
you so much. I'm good. Thank you for having me, Raphael. Thank you.
Oh, it's all my pleasure. The honor is all mine. So can you introduce us to your childhood and city of birth?
All right. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. And as far as the city goes, that's the state. And as far as the city goes, I was born in a city called Ikoyi. And that's where I was born. And I was born September 29th, 1993. And I believe that was a Wednesday. Yes.
Oh, Wednesday. I can't recall if you were in Ghana, there's a name for Wednesday. Like I was born on a Monday, so my Ghanaian name is Kojo.
Oh, see, because I was going to ask you, I was like, where are you from? So you're Ghanaian.
Well, I have a Ghanaian background, but I was
Okay.
born in Jos.
Oh, okay. See, I've been to both Jos and Ghana. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay.
So yeah, so I have a Ghanaian name that never made it to my passport, but it's there. It just exists.
Okay.
So a few people know me by that. I have another nickname, Fernando, and there are places in Nigeria where they know me as Fernando Kojo. Some people online know me by that moniker, like Fernando Kojo.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
they don't know me by Raphael or Raphael, as they say it in Benin City, where I spend my life.
Yes.
Raphael.
Yeah.
You have to emphasize Raphael.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
So what was your childhood like in Ikoyi?
I would say, well, I guess let me ask you this. So you obviously being born in Nigeria and like, did you grow up there and live there?
Yes.
Okay. And so like you're a Nigerian.
Yes. When I want to be.
Oh my God. That is a very convenient answer and one that I'm going to start using. I am Nigerian when I want to be. Um, yeah, absolutely. So I would say it was good. I think the misconception for me after moving here is that, my childhood or like growing up in Africa, Nigeria was like this weird experience or something that was maybe bad or strange that made me want to move here. Absolutely not. Um, it was really good. And I think sometimes that could be really, and as we progress in our conversation, it's one
Mhm.
of those things, it's one of those things that I had to really come to terms with, as things got maybe not so good, that there were parts of my life that were really, really good. Because I think there's a tendency sometimes to say, oh, the story was all bad and it can only have been all bad, for me to have any sort of empathy for myself. But there were parts of it that were really good. I just I went to like there was this thing called VBS every summer of a vacation Bible school, and I went to that, and that was really fun. I lived in a great like compound because we lived in flats, and so I lived in a great compound. I would ride my bike, and I remember fond memories of just being super excited to go just like after school to ride my bike with the neighborhood kids, and like dogs weren't the same experience as living in the West. And so we had this neighborhood dog, and we would all just taunt it and it would chase all of us. um yeah. That
Ah,
was yeah. And so it's not the same as being over here where it's like a household like pet and everyone like loves it. This
yeah.
dog was
Yeah.
just outside,
Mhm.
and we would all just it was a huge like Doberman. And so I
Ah.
don't know what we were doing. Yeah, I have no clue what we were doing. We could
Uh,
have been its name was Marcus. I will never forget that. I have no clue what we were doing because everyone could have been really hurt. But we
yeah.
would taunt this dog, and then it would chase us for just ages and ages and ages, and we would all run. Um, and I just remember loving that. But it was really good. I would say it was good.
All right. So you mentioned something about memories, and so that ties into the next question. What's your favorite memory from your childhood?
Wow. Oh my God. Okay. My favorite memory from my childhood. Okay. Okay. You know what? I have tied, like, I've hung on to this, I will say, like, for a really long time. And it might seem a little ambiguous, um, because I don't know that it's a memory as much as it is a feeling. Um, and so it's sort of this feeling, and I've tried to, like, you know, capture it in songs or my writing because I write my own songs or writing like, a script or something because part of the work I did last year was put out a self published book. It didn't do really what I wanted it to do, but it was called The Crown of Newearth. And I had to sort of take it off the shelves because I had to do more work on it, editing wise, and just it just wasn't the project I really wanted to put out, but at least, it was finished. But part of what I've always tried to capture in my work is this feeling of, I'll describe it to you. And so it's like my mom, after she would cook food, there would be the smell of food in the house, which is something she doesn't like actually. And so she tries to fight that like smell, but I actually really love it. And so it's the smell of food in the house, but I would have been sleeping. And so I wake up to the smell of food in the house and the house is cold. It's it's a very specific like feeling of like waking up. Yeah. Of like waking up to a cold house or a cold room in the evening, and that smells like food, good food. And so it's like that feeling to me is everything. And I felt it very few times. And once when I first moved to California, I felt that it was like one evening and I woke up and I had cooked and I think took like a nap. And I woke up and it was really cold in my apartment that I lived in at the time.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh my God, this is the feeling, this is the feeling, this is the feeling. And I treasured it and I was so happy. But yeah.
So the home cooked food, in a way, the aroma brought warmth to your body.
Yes. And so, oh wow, I've never thought about it that way actually. It's that juxtaposition of like warmth of the food and something home cooked versus the cold surroundings. And then waking up from, just like a nap or something and just entering this new like life or just new consciousness and being welcome to it. Yeah, it's something that I really love.
There's this joke we always make, like, when someone says, "Oh, I can smell," "Oh, I pick the scent," "Oh, I pick it," like, when I was in Port Harcourt, and the boys will always like contribute to this cooking because, like we used to have a lot of boys could cook, and the boys could cook. We'll bring ingredients together. Somebody will contribute to the rice, someone contributes meat, this one contributes to some other ingredients.
Everything.
But there was this one guy who never contributed anything except the eating.
God forbid.
Sometimes we'll silently try and bring the ingredients together to make sure he doesn't know. But all of a sudden, it's like as soon as the food is cooked and we all sit down, we've dished, we're like, okay, shh, don't say anything, man. Don't say anything. Well, his name, I don't know if that was his real name, but everybody, his name, he went by Baba. It's like, oh, Baba, have you seen Baba? No, I haven't seen Baba. Okay.
All right. Oh my God.
And then just as soon as, you're about to start dishing from the pot, someone's head will just peep through the door. Hey, I was picking the scent I picked the scent from like 1 mile away. It smells so good. What you guys cook today? I said, man, this guy, there's no way he can escape. You can't escape, and then he'll be like, there was so much love in this. I smell the love in the food. The love was in the food.
Oh my God.
We are also angry and full of. We're just pissed that it never made sense to us. That there was so much love that went into the ingredients because everybody contributed out of their heart. There was no.
Of course.
Nobody was forced to contribute to making that meal. So
yeah.
The love was really went into the pot.
Yes.
There was a lot of warmth that went into making that meal that it actually came out smelling good.
Yes.
That he just showed up. So when he's talking about, I can smell the love. I can smell the love. We were like, man, we just but one day we took a revenge on him, though. We did take a revenge on him because, we had this in between it looked like you could go through the kitchen to like a back door between the kitchen and like a back entrance. So there's a passageway. So we told him like, hey man, go through there to get something. So he went and as soon as he got into the passageway, we locked the kitchen door and locked the and he was talking.
My
like, hey man, the door is locked. And we're like, yeah, we'll start eating.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, you don't contribute. You don't bring anything. We'll clean the whole pot. We were like, yeah, we just had to.
It's true. He didn't
Uh,
put anything.
yeah, but it took years later for me to start, for it to make sense that we actually had love in the making of the meal. It made sense what he
Of
was saying, that
course.
he could smell
Of
the love.
course.
He
Of
felt the,
course.
but now, like, now that you're talking about the cold room and the warmth, I was like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah, of
he made
course.
some point, but yeah, well, he still didn't make it good. So, he also attended boarding school early in life. Did you have any
I did.
memories from your boarding school experience?
Plenty. I started boarding school when I was 9. Yeah, I actually remember the first day that I went to boarding school. I went to boarding school from my aunt's wedding. I attended her wedding, and right after her wedding was over, we went to the reception, and I stayed for like, I don't know, 20 minutes at the reception, and then I had to leave to go straight to like school because I should have gone to school earlier that day, like because they drop everybody off really early in the morning. But then I had to be like at a wedding and everything. And I just remember being so upset that everybody got to stay and enjoy this wedding, and then I had to like leave and you know. But anyway, I had very vivid experiences of like being in boarding school. And I went to 2 different boarding schools. The first boarding school I went to actually was in, actually, they were both in, I think, Ocean State, if I'm being correct now. I'm not sure. But Ibadan is in Ocean State, if I'm being correct. I think. I'm not sure anymore.
If it's Ibadan is Oyo State.
Oyo State, okay. Oyo State. But the first one I went to was in it was Faith Academy, and like they're both associated with the churches. And then the second one I went to was Lifeford International. And so, but the first one was pretty good. I went there for 2 years, and it just was a regular boarding school experience. But the second one was sort of I think a more traditional, I guess not traditional, but a more stereotypical boarding experience of maybe like being bullied and like the not great things that happen with people in boarding schools, like the horror stories you hear. That was more so my second experience. But my first experience, which happened ironically when I was younger, was pretty good.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, how did you navigate the bad experiences in boarding school?
Uh, Navigating the bad experiences in boarding school. Wow. I think I've had so much time as I've gotten older to think about this, and I've really been fortunate. That's part of like the blessing I think of moving to America is to be in therapy and to kind of see things from a different perspective. Because like before I moved to America, I would have never ever considered anything like therapy,
Yeah.
and I would have never thought of something like depression or like post-traumatic stress disorder or anything like that. I would have never taken medication for any of these kind of things. But a lot of like really not great things is like how I want to put them
Yeah.
happened in that second boarding school. And they happened when I was really young because I went to that school from when I was 11 to when I was 13. Um, and I went to that school with people who were a lot older because when I was in 7th grade, for example, I was 9. And even for Nigeria, that's pretty young.
Yes.
Um, yeah, because a lot of people are sort of like, oh, well, you're from Nigeria, like they start school early. That's still pretty young for like, for JS1 to be 9 in JS1 is still pretty young. Um, and so in that second school, that experience, how I navigated that, unfortunately, was just to think it was normal. Because I was so young, all the like things that were happening, like I had like one of the crazy experiences I had once. I had a bunch of boys. They like all took me into like a bathroom, and this is gonna sound so crazy, but they all started like the way Americans describe it is like they hucked like loogies at me, but it's like Nigerians how they'll say it's like kata, like kata from like your throat, like they were clearing their throat and they were spitting on me basically.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's how we can describe it in Nigeria. But in America, they'll say, oh, they were hacking like loogies at me. But in Nigeria, you say, they were clearing their throat and, spitting on me.
That's
And
hazy.
yes, it's that kind of thing,
Mhm.
And and there were so many other kind of things like that. But just so many, so many, so many bad things. And
And
the
these
way
were
that,
senior students, right?
the funny thing is like some of these were senior students, and a lot of them were my mates.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because you were much
But
younger. Yeah.
because like I was much younger, it was so, they were older than me, and
Mm-hmm.
the school I went to was a school where like a lot of the parents or people who like you now, for example, you're here. Let's say you want your children to have a Nigerian experience, you'll send them to that school because the school was
Yes.
like Americanized.
Yes.
And so at least your children will have a Nigerian experience in an Americanized context,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then they will also train your children to have like to prepare for the SATs. That way your children can come back.
Yeah.
And so like yeah, they're over there, they're learning about Nigeria in Nigeria, but they're also learning to take the SATs so they can come here and do college. And so a lot of the kids had they had grown up very, very fast already. And they had all these American ideas or British ideas, British concepts. And they were also a lot older. And so they were just exposed to so many other different things. And the only way that my brain at that age could like just figure anything out was just to just say, this is normal. This happens to other people. And
Mm.
was happening to some other, kids. But the only difference is like those kids, like when they told their parents, like I remember this one kid, we all went to, because in Nigeria, this place, Silverbird Cinemas,
Yes.
in Lagos.
Lego.
Yeah, Silverbird in Lagos. It was midterm break. We all went to Silverbird. Um, and in Silverbird, they went and I don't know what happened to us, but in the bathroom somewhere, they were disturbing the boy. They were just disturbing him, and he was was enough for him. And so he told his mom about everything that had been going on in school. And his mom, she called the principal. I don't even know how she managed to do all of this, but she called the principal. And as a kid, like for me, it was also normal, and I had such a sense of. I mean, now I can see it as powerlessness of like, oh, nothing can happen. It's always gonna be this way. But back then, I was just like, oh, it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
But so I couldn't even understand how his mom called the principal, But his mom called the principal, and then the boy who was like, terrorizing her son got expelled by the time we got back from midterm break. Um, but me, when I told my mom like, oh, one or two things is happening, and it wasn't even one or two things, it was so much. When I told her, um, it wasn't the same sort of response. No one got kicked out. No one. The most that ever happened was I remember once I was walking kind of in a hallway. I was walking in a hallway. This one kid was so upset. He was just so upset. And he was like having a tantrum. And I was walking down this hallway and he was like storming next to me and he just punched me in the eye.
Wow.
Yeah. And my eye just, and I, we were like in a public place. We were in a public place. And I think that he felt like he was able to do that because like everyone did stuff like that to me and everyone knew about it. And so he was angry about something else. He wasn't angry at me, but he just felt like that was something, he could take
Yeah,
it out
yeah.
on me,
Take it out. Yeah.
And I was like there and that kind of thing. I was just in the, I guess, right place at the wrong time or wrong place at the right, I don't even know. But the worst that happened is because my eye, like, was swollen. My eye I looked battered. And the worst thing that happened to that kid, because I mean, my eye was literally swollen. The worst thing that happened to him, they told him he couldn't go to the prom. And so that's what happened. I don't even know if my mom found out about that, but they just told him, oh, he can't go to the prom. And that was it. But he didn't get expelled. He didn't get suspended. I guess he got what you would consider in America like an in-school suspension or something like that.
Suspension. Yeah. Even by Nigerian standards, that was still it's just a suspension.
Yeah.
The basic suspension.
Yeah.
Because a lot of, from just the little that you've mentioned, it's I attended both private and public schools, and even on the private side when I started, looking back now, there are things that I saw, like I was lucky for the main part when I started because I was a day student. I wasn't a boarding student, but the school had boarding. They also had boarding students, and we had the horror story.
Yeah.
There was a guy who I remember. It was like he had done so much, and it got to the extreme. Like one of the junior students was so fed up that guy had to, like, finally write a letter or something, and then the parent finally showed up and believed, or the parent came for an impromptu visit, and the boy just let loose and told everything. Because we had seen this boy telling kids to go lie down in the trash. Day students people knew about that, and we saw him.
Exactly.
He was a dictator. He was a tyrant.
Exactly.
And that was the only stuff we knew, that we saw with our eyes, and the stuff he got without people even seeing it was a lot worse than that. And by the time they now called the explosion happened of the revelation of his abuses, then it was like, oh, people were lining up to come confess. Oh, he did this to me. He did this. He wipe me and just be beating me, and and then now the vice principal got so mad and started. It literally turned to a fighting match between the vice principal and this guy who had been beating and abusing students for months.
I mean,
and it was like, so nobody knew about this, or you all just decided to look away while he had been, because he'd been doing it for years. He was in his final year when they decided they punished him. They beat him for like almost 3 days straight. They were just beating him, which in a way was still not a solution.
No.
And after all the beatings, then they expelled him. And then he went to another private school.
Exactly, to go and do the same thing now, but maybe worse.
His family had money. He came from a wealthy family in the first place.
Yeah, that's another thing too.
And the thing is that he didn't really pick on the wealthy kids. He picked on the poorer kids.
Yes.
It started that, like, looking back now, as started putting 2 and 2. So it was until the day he picked on a wealthy kid that his sins started becoming public.
You know what is? Yes. That is the same thing that happened.
The poor kids, it was okay. The poor kids didn't have anybody who would come make a lot of noise. That
is the same situation that happened, because at Silverbird, the person, I will not forget his name. His name was Fulani. His mom, they lived when I was younger. People who were wealthy to me, they were people who had upstairs and downstairs in their house, and so that's what I considered like wealthy. Yeah. But his mom, it's like, oh, if you have upstairs and downstairs in your house, you have money, and so it's like,
that's
it's it's like you have some upstairs and downstairs, but yeah, like this kid and like his friends and his cohorts, like they picked on people who had like disabilities. Like I remember there was a kid who had like a really bad like lazy eye, and they picked up people who had like disabilities, or people who didn't have like money, and you could somehow tell they didn't have money, maybe when their parents dropped them off, the type of card that they had or something like that. They picked on people like that. But with this one kid, Fulani, like when they picked on, like his mom, like she was pretty, she was pretty well to do. And when they picked on him, like, yeah, as soon as they picked on him, it was over. Because his mom made a direct phone call. And I remember like the kid just never came back to school. And they were like, oh yeah, because he messed with this, and I was like, I was there. I don't even know what happened, but I was there when it happened. Like, because I don't even know what happened, but I was there,
I mean, even in a public school, similar happened too. You messed with the wrong person, and because by the time I was in my final year of public school, the military was still in power, and I remember they touched someone who was always quiet, didn't give the impression like he or she had money, and one of these people messed with them, and then all we saw was the person left school, and then one soldier came back. The soldier just came. Do you know what that meant? When the soldier shows up to your school, they point at the person. Next thing you see the guy doing frog jumps. And for the audience who's not aware of what frog jump is, you might want to look it up. If you want to do physical exercises to work your thighs, yeah. If you have a large living room right now that is a stay-at-home period, hold your ears, get down, squat. Yeah, by the time you do frog jumps for like 5 minutes, yeah, your thighs are on fire. But they start to kids, the soldier has a whip, and they'll be whipping you. They take you the equivalent of a football field for like 2 hours. Take that kid. Like, oh, you want to bully people? But yeah, the soldier is going to be there with you for 2 hours. You can mess with somebody's kid. Like, that guy's messing with people's kids for years. Nobody touched him, but they did touch one soldier's kid or someone connected to a soldier. Bam, that guy just gonna release one soldier, go discipline that person. And then I would just this person had connections, and then that's how you see that person has been put in the pocket, or like, touch not this person. That's the message. So that's how we got to learn about connections without really learning about connections. That was how the messaging began, in a way. When it came to bullying. So for those of us who didn't have that power, it still didn't help, because we saw it as, if you didn't have the power to get someone in your family to step up, then it's either you took on the bully yourself.
Yes.
And, based on the movies, Karate Kid, you fight. You fight. And I tried to do my own fights once in a while. I lost a bunch of them.
I tried, and I lost all of them. But, yeah.
I probably won one or two that I punch the person and take off. If you can't catch me, I won. Oh well. We can do a whole. I think I'll have to do a whole episode one day on this.
I think so. On just like bullying in like African like boarding schools or African systems, because I think I could go on and on, because you've mentioned this and I've definitely mentioned this because I've seen it. People see it.
Yeah.
People kind of like hear, people see it, but no one says anything. People
normalize it.
Oh my God. The day students see it, the boarding students definitely see it, because they know, because they're living there with you. I mean, these kids, they have other kids washing their clothes for them. Yep. They have kids doing their homework for them. They have kids like take all that provisions, everything. I would have people tell me, my mates who did not even pass me, maybe they passed me 3 months or 4 months in age. I'll be working, they'll just tell me to kneel down on the spot.
Yep.
But because of my mind was so conditioned, it didn't even matter if you passed me only 1 month in age, I'll just kneel down there. And so now I'm late for class, and the class is just there. And so teacher is looking at me like, who said you should kneel down here? And it's like, oh, that person. And it's like, what's wrong with you? Stand up and enter the class, I beg. And it's like, and so the teachers don't even understand what's going on. And it's like, it's wild. It's really
I
wild.
don't know. I think even the teachers knew, but the teachers didn't. They weren't
Exactly.
even equipped. I would say the system doesn't even equip teachers to properly handle those situations, because teachers only knew how to handle situations by either flogging or just shouting. And as soon
Exactly.
as the teacher walks away, what happens? The person is
It
still with you.
continues.
So
And
yeah,
sometimes they shout at the wrong person because
exactly. Yeah,
if you're kneeling down there because your mate told you to kneel down, they'll now be shouting at you and tell you don't have sense. Your
yeah,
mate told you to
yeah.
kneel down and you
It's
two you now
victim
kneel down
blaming.
there, you don't have sense. Exactly. And so they're shouting at you now. They'll say, I beg, enter the class, you don't have sense. Instead of trying to question why your mate told you to kneel down in the first place or how this nonsense started or like what's been. And so it's like now the whole thing has just they have more power now.
Yeah,
And so it's
yeah,
so
because they've actually
strange.
created more ammunition for
Yes,
the bully to use to oppress the victim. Because first thing they said was, "Are you stupid? Why?" So if they tell you
e-
to jump into fire, you're going to jump into fire.
exactly,
That's the common language that they
exactly,
always use. And for people, like,
exactly.
they said that to me too. Like, I was lucky. Like I didn't fall for the like kneeling down. Like if you told me to kneel down, I'll say, "Shut up, you kneel down." Like I always say that, then I get punched. But I will end up with like being punched or like being slapped, and then I'll hold my face, and then when the teacher comes, I'm like, well, "What happened to you?" I say, "Oh, this guy told me to kneel down. I refused, and then he slapped me." Then instead of to say, "Why did you slap him?" Then it will be like, "Why did you say shut up to the person that told you to kneel down?" Then I'm the one that's still attacking. I'm like, "Wait, I got
Exactly,
slapped."
exactly.
I got punched or kicked. And then the first day that I still remember the first day that I stood up to my bully, and the bully like slapped me, and I said, "How dare you slap me?" So I slapped the bully back. Like, I put all the years that I've been, I think I was like 9 years old, but all the years like I've been bullied, and I just like, oh, pow, slap the guy back. Oh, the guy was so shocked, started crying. The guy flogged me. This guy's been bullying everybody in the class. But it's just like, why did you slap him? And she flogged me, like, started flogging me. I was like, what? The messaging just went wrong after that. So after that, I just didn't have the energy
Exactly,
for like 2 years.
exactly,
I was so
exactly.
defeated because I was going to be pumped, or like they were going to like, good job, you stood up to this guy who has been bullying you all this time instead of running up to me like, oh, he slapped me, or he kicked me or something. And then I got flogged for standing up to my bully. And
Yep,
looking back now, I was like, that teacher just sends the wrong message to,
it does.
because you guys will say stand up to the bully. Okay, now the person stands up to the bully, then pow. Well, why you stand up to the bully? Okay, then what do you want
Yeah.
me to do? That you take care of the problem, you won't take care of the problem.
No.
And then people will now be blaming, well, but that's the problem when the society is always like, blame the victim. Everything is the victim's fault. The victim's
Yes.
fault. That's all they know. Victim's fault. And that's
Yes.
why I said the teachers and were never equipped, because all they told the teachers is go to the class and teach. That's your job. Go to the
Mhm.
class and teach. And nothing else should happen in the class. And all this is still tied back to when the military took over and started messing with the whole infrastructure and the whole system of the whole, when they just destroyed the whole education system in Nigeria. Because
Wow.
Nigerian education, like, you can look all the way back to like the 60s, 70s, when education was still a lot more, well, it was still something. And then with all the coup taking place, lack of investments in education and all that, you can start saying all the stories, how it started changing, and then it became you don't pay the teachers, and teachers are strikes on strikes on strikes. Who's going to have time to, like, I want to take care of who wants to teach? Who has time, like, oh, the kids are fighting? Well, is that my problem? Is it my problem? Well, your father did not train you, your mother did not train you. That's what it comes into. This child without home training. What is the problem on me? Government will not pay me. Then I'm the one. I'll come and put home training in you. I'll come here. Let me flog you. Then flogging. And everything just goes in one horrible circle.
Yes.
Terrible
Yes.
circle. That
Yes.
So it's unfortunate, but now it's paying off wrongly, because all those kids turn out to be the leaders in the future, and then they now start, oh, we have bad leadership, but how did you train them? How did you bring them up? Because they went through a wrong system, and then people are like, oh, but Africa has, like Nigeria, we have bad leaders. How did you bring them up? What examples
Exactly.
you set for them when they were kids?
Exactly.
What did you tell them was the right thing to do? You told them it was okay to
Exactly.
bully people, and then when they become leader, when they now have the tools of authority, the tools to oppress the whole community.
They do it on a large scale.
Exactly, because you told them it was okay to do it
Yeah.
when they were younger,
Yeah.
bully their classmates.
Yeah.
Then when they become,
And
they now have the larger machinery to hold the whole
yes.
state. And then, but if you look at all the people doing it at state level, look at their behavior when they were children. What were they doing? You can trace
Same
it.
thing.
Yeah. So
Yep.
anyway, we can spend all day, but let's move on. So you arrived in the United States as a teenager,
Yes.
and what was adjusting to life like for you? And you arrived in a southern state. So did the weather make adaptation easier for you? So it's two questions.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. I was I didn't. The weather did not matter to me because I was very excited to like see snow, and so I didn't care if it was hot or cold or anything. I just wanted to see snow. Like I remember before I moved here in 2008 of September, and before I moved here, yeah, before I moved here, I had come the year before for Christmas in 2007 to visit. And that Christmas, I went to New York, and that's the first time I'd ever seen snow in my life.
Oh,
And
what was that
actually,
experience like?
it was so good. It was so good because I remember like I used to want so many things when I was younger, and my mom, she really tried to give them to me. Like I remember, I think once we went all the way to Joss actually because I think like people said it used to snow in Joss,
And
and so
it
it's like
snowed, I think, 70s, 60s, or no, early 70s or 60s, late 60s. It snowed once. There was,
yeah,
yeah. But during my
and
time, there
so
was hail that I had when I was born. Yeah.
wow. And so she like took me to Josh because it was like, I mean, she knew people there and I'm sure she was just going to visit. But the whole idea was like I really wanted to see snow. And she was like, oh, it has snowed in Josh before. So if you want to go with me. And so I did, but it never obviously did snow. But when I saw snow for the first time, it was really nice. So the weather when I moved here was just, yeah, it didn't really matter much to me, but it definitely helps that it was warmer, I think. When I first moved to America, like that helped. You know, it helped to live in a southern state. What else? Let's see. But also, yeah, living in a southern state, there's, and this is gonna be, yep, this is perfect to talk about with you. There's a lot of things that I wasn't prepared for moving to America.
Okay.
And there's a lot of things that like no one kind of, and this is not like an excuse or blaming anyone, but there are a lot of things that I was prepared for, and there are a lot of things I wasn't prepared for. Especially because I moved here in 2008, and so like right after I moved here, like 2 months later, Obama became president, and I was seeing a lot of like weird dynamics that I had never really seen before. And so
When you say
I
weird
moved,
dynamics, like what?
well, I never really experienced racism.
Hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, and I moved to like Georgia, of all the places in the country.
Where in Georgia?
I moved to a small, I don't know if it's a small town, but I moved to a county called Grayson County. And I went to school in a county called Loganville County. And fun fact, I was the only Black person in my senior class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was the only black person in my junior class, and then I was the only black person in my senior class. So for 2 years, I was the only black person with like those group of people. It was a small private school, and there were like 24 people in my senior class, and I was the only black person. Um, and I think in the junior class, so when I was a junior, and you know, she was a sophomore, and like so, like every year that I was there was one black person in the senior class, one black person in the junior class, one black person in the sophomore class, one black person in the freshman class. There was just like one black person. And the senior and the freshman, I think they were siblings. Yeah. And their mom was like a doctor in the town. And then the girl who was in the sophomore, because she was a year under me when I was a junior, we went to the same church. Um, yeah, and so it's like we kind of all knew each other, and so it was small, but it wasn't. I don't. Well, I mean, I guess it was small. Um, yeah, but it was just I. There were things I'd never really experienced before that I was experiencing for the first time. The only time I'd ever seen racism sort of in action was when I went to South Africa on a school trip. Um, years ago, when I was in that boarding school that wasn't so good, um, we had not been allowed to go into a store because they said it was closed, even though it was like daytime.
Oh.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to go into the store. But then after, we all sort of went back into the bus, we saw people going into the store. And so they had to explain to us, like our, teachers and guides, oh, the reason why you were not able to go to the store was because of, racism and apartheid and like this and that. And yeah. But at that time, I think I was like 11 or 12. I think I was 12, yeah. This was the 2000 and I want to say 2006. Yeah, I want to say 2006.
You remember where in South Africa?
I want to say Cape Town.
Okay.
Like Cape, yeah. I want to say Cape Town. Yeah. Okay. And so it was 2006 in Cape Town, and that happened, but it didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah.
And then at some point either after or before the trip, we tried to watch Roots, but that didn't make sense to me. So like there was kind of an exposure to what racism meant, but there was no reason for me to try to understand it because they weren't testing us about it in like Nigeria. Like they weren't asking us questions about it, for like WAEC or anything like that. Like it didn't matter. It matters here and it matters in the history of the world. But as far as like a kid who's trying to get through like, the equivalent of a history test, it didn't matter. And it didn't matter, when I was walking down the street because nobody was looking at me, like police officer in Nigeria is trying to collect something from you. They're not looking at you to shoot you because, of the color of your skin or something like that.
True.
And so,
Nigerian, as someone who grew up in Nigeria, I don't know if with you going to school in Lagos, I still went to school in Ibadan though, but when it comes to racism, what I had in the books was more like Martin Luther King, fought for civil rights, and after he died, they passed the Civil Rights Act, and kind of racism was solved. That's
exactly.
Exactly.
And even the Martin Luther King says, like, I'm telling you, like, I don't know if it's because of the teachers that we have. I don't even want to blame them because maybe it's just me that did not read. But I did not hear about Martin Luther King until I came here. And
Ah,
so that I'm telling
in
you,
Benin City, we had big Martin Luther King. I had a dream speech. They used to like actually force us to like master that speech to like
yeah,
quote it, and like if you could be the kid who could like say the whole speech and just come. That's all it just meant to us, really. It didn't. It
yeah.
had nothing more than that. And then like if you said the N word or Kefa, the Southern African version, yeah, then the Africans version in South Africa. That was it. That's racism. We didn't know that
Yeah.
drugs, but and it will take. So years later, I realized I faced racism in Nigeria actually, but didn't
But
know.
see,
Yeah, but
speaking of speaking
I
of
didn't really
speaking
know
of
that that was
Ghana,
racism.
actually.
Yeah, I didn't know that what racism was, other than because it was the textbook version that we were given said
Mm-hmm.
looked like racism died in the 60s. You know,
Yeah.
it never so racism never happened in the British Empire. Racism never happened in South America. Racism never happened in other places. That's
Can you imagine?
black and white. That's why it was so black and white for us. That's why most of us
Yeah.
come to America with a certain mindset of like,
Expectation.
yeah,
Yeah.
like why are black people complaining? Why are black people born here complaining?
Exactly.
Like everything is you guys have it easy. You guys are
Exactly.
good. Then we now become surprised like,
You
oh,
you see the real thing, yeah, when you come. Like
yeah,
for us, speaking of Ghana, like I went on all these trips and I was learning of like, Kwame, Nkrumah, and I was
mhm,
going to all these places learning about like Nelson Mandela. Like that's what we were learning about. Like we were learning of all these people who were fighting for things like in Africa, like people
yes,
who were doing like incredible things like there.
yeah,
Um, and so that's the stuff that like I was learning about, the whole time. And so by the time I came here, and I think one of my very first experience, I didn't even know about the N word. I did not know about it at
wow,
all.
wow,
And so when I first went to, in high school actually, um, I used to have kids, this one kid in particular, he used to call me the N word. Like he used to just say like, and he would say it. Um, and I thought it was like a compliment. And so like I let him say it and I would like, and everybody else kind of knew what it meant. And so like they were all kind of like fascinated that I was letting him like do it. And
mhm,
so it's like, but I didn't know what it meant. So I let him say it. I was like, sure, whatever. Like I just let him say it, like, and he said it, and he, whatever, and it was just like fine. Um, but like one of the things that happened at that school was they had like a mock election, like before the real election,
yeah,
and so this was like in October or something, and Obama like lost in my school by a landslide.
wow,
Um, Yeah, which I don't think really means, I mean, I can try to make all this meaning of it or whatever, but to me, it was very, I had a kid's brain at the time and I could have tried to make all this meaning of it, but it was just very telling, Even at that time, I was like, oh, like this just doesn't seem balanced at all. I feel like the majority of people here just don't really want him to be president for some reason. Um, and I just remember thinking like, oh, okay, well, whatever that means what. And then he became president, and it was such a big deal, and it was just, and I didn't understand the magnitude of it.
mm,
I just didn't understand the magnitude of it. I do now, but then I think on YouTube I saw like a clip of Oprah explaining why she didn't like the N word or something like that. And then from then on, I was like, you can't call me this anymore. Um, yeah, and that's how like I just bit by bit I started learning like Black history.
yes.
Um, yeah, because even at school, the school I went to, we weren't being like taught Black history.
I
Um,
think most American schools teach Black history, except if you have like a Black professor or like HBCUs. Since I've been
yeah,
there,
well,
people have
the colleges I went to,
yeah.
there was a lot of opportunity to learn about Black history, but the high school I went to, no, 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 no. Like it was just the high school I went to. Just there was no. It was a small like Christian high school, and there was no like
That's what I mean.
teaching.
The when I say schools, the high schools,
Yeah,
the school system. That's what I mean by the school system.
yeah. And so, and then on MLK Day, like when everything was like on TV about him, then I learned more about that. Like the very next year that I was in America for the first time, I was like, oh, okay, this is something else I didn't know. And so bit by bit, I learned about that, and I was just piecing together, what it meant to be Black, because, for the first time ever, I'd gone from being a Nigerian person to being a Black person. And those can be two very different things.
Yeah.
From being an African person to being a Black person, because now you've gone from having a cultural identity, to having like an ethnic identity, or having like almost, I don't even know how to, or you've gone from, it's a weird, like, it's a weird way to put it. It's a weird way to put it, but you've gone from having one identity to having another one, and that other one has been stigmatized for a really, really, really long time.
The truth is that both identities are stigmatized.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because they will tell you to go home in a minute. Like, they will say in a minute, like once they hear like my last name, like, oh, you need to do, like, what are you need to do, and I'm just like, and so, because before I changed my name, like when my transition started, like, yeah, that was a whole process as well. And it's like,
all right,
it was just,
we'll come to that.
Okay. Yeah.
So from, I guess, with the realizations of, now that you've begun to identify as a Black person, you now seeing the picture of you coming to the realization, and you've been awakened now, from the person who you weren't. So I'll say this is the first stage of being awakened, right?
Yes.
Who you like, oh, because I consider it being in a bubble. Like when I arrived there, I thought I knew a lot of stuff, because I used to be buried in foreign affairs, and then so I knew a little bit. But then I arrived there and I was like, wow, the racism picture I had was way off. And then I started, but I was still in my Nigerian bubble to a large extent for a while.
Yeah, me too. Yes, yes.
I'd like consciously remove myself out of that bubble. And so with that in mind, did that play a role in why you were able to move to college out of state? Did you you first went to college at Valdosta? Where was that?
It's I believe it's South Georgia,
Okay, so
but
you
it's
first went to college in Georgia first.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with Valdosta.
You actually, and this speaks to what we're talking about as well.
Okay.
Because my first experience of being in America, I had always been around a lot of white people. Because the town I lived in had a lot of white people. The school I went to was a small school with mostly white people in it. And so when I went to Valdosta, that was the first time I had been around so many Black people. And so that was different as well. And I'm really glad that happened, because it took an adjustment, and I learned a lot of things, because there were so many things that I had to learn the very hard way. So many, like, I just had so many, I was just talking to like a friend about this. I had so many crazy ideas, and I was like, I started college when I was 16. And so like I started college, like I was 16, and then a couple months later I turned 17. And so I thought I knew everything, and I was so brash, and I was just saying, like, I had all these opinions about slavery and this and that. And, I was Kanye West before Kanye West. And so I really was. And so to have all these people who, had lived the Black experience from their first day on earth, to have them tell me, absolutely not. That's not the way it is. You're not going to say that. Like, you have to rethink that. Like, you can't say that out loud. You can't even think that in your head. I'm sorry to let you, to have people kind of confront me was really good. But then to also have people be my friend, because it would have been really kind of maybe a little weird if all the Black people I was meeting was just like confronting me and being like, no, 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 no. But to have like, people who were Black be my friend and to say like, oh, let's have fun. We love you. Like, that was good for me as well, because overwhelmingly all the narratives of Black people I was getting was from a white perspective.
Thank you. That's very important to come to that realization.
Yeah, because like every narrative I was getting of Black people was from like a white perspective or like from school or something. And, no one is sitting me down at school in high school and saying, this is what you should think of Black people. But it's like, it's social cues or like little conversations, little things, like kind of like, it's like socialization, like the way that you pick up on learning, like how kids learn. And again, I was 14 when I moved here, so there was so much to learn. And for the first 2 years, I was socialized by mostly white people, or mostly around white people. I lived with my cousins, like, in an African home, around Black people as well. And so they had like Black friends and they had Black people coming over, but I didn't go to the same school as them. I didn't hang out with their friends. And so it's like I'm mostly socialized by white people. And so when I'm seeing like their like Black friends or like Black people who like they're around, I'm seeing it from a different perspective. And so it was very important for me to like go to college and make my own friends and do like, just have my own learned experiences. Because even like for the first 2 years, when I would go to church, I went to a Nigerian church. Yeah. So it's kind of like, or the first year at least. So it's kind of like, exactly. It's kind of like what you said. I was still in that bubble. So I went to a Nigerian church. I had a Nigerian doctor. I ate Nigerian food. Yeah. And after I left that bubble, I went completely into like a white world. I went to like a white Baptist church. I lived with white people. I moved into like, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Blind Side.
Yes.
That was kind of like my life. And so like the people who owned my high school, like I actually moved in with them. And so like they had me come live with them, and I lived with them for like a couple of months. And so it's like and there was a lot of talk of like me becoming a member of their family. And so like there was an overwhelming idea. I mean, and I never thought I was white by any means at all. But as far as seeing things from a perspective that white people saw, that was happening very rapidly. And because I was so young, there was like no one is spelling it out for you. Like, oh, you have you have to see this in this way, or you have to see that in that way.
You're not able to associate things from the Black side of, you're not able to, because you start beginning to disassociate with the Black side of it subconsciously, because you start being like, well, why are Black people angry? Why are Black people like, but Black
exactly
people, you start white-splaining to Black people without even realizing it.
But it's so funny. It's like, I mean, like there's so many things that happen just like as parents raise kids, like how you just say, oh, we don't do that. Or like, don't say that. Or like, oh, no. Like, stop that. Like, don't touch that. Or like, And so living with people for like 6 months and having that moment like multiple times a day of like, oh, don't do that. Or like, oh, we don't do that. We don't say that. Or like, we don't, or just like moments like that and like soaking all of that up because I was like, so eager and I was so like thankful and I loved the church we went to and I loved everything and I was going to summer camp and this and that and just by the time I got to my college, because from their house I went to college, and so by the time I got to my college, like you said, I was white splaining things. I was like, oh, slavery, da, 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 da. And people were like, oh my God, I am going to knock your head off your body. And I was just like, guys, you have to forgive me. I just moved out of
Intervention had to be done for you.
Yeah, and I'm super lucky that I had that because even to this day, the way that I talk, a lot of people like call that out. Like a lot, a lot of people call out the way that I talk.
And they say you don't talk like other Nigerians. But one thing is that being black, we all have code switching. We all do code switching.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
It's a tool that we use to survive. So people don't realize that. But one thing about the messaging that I was glad that you brought up, which made me happy, is that it's I think people mistake it that we only get the messaging here. It's sometimes also tied back to our upbringing in Nigeria. We don't question where the messaging comes from, where we have anti-blackness. If you think all the way back, growing up in Nigeria, what was your impression of Black America? When you saw what was the first image that you saw on TV? Black America. As a kid, Tarzan was like one of my favorite shows. Then the old Tarzan TV show. That's why I don't even mess with the current Tarzan movie. I can't tolerate it. It's a when you talk about cinematography and all that, yeah, it looks good. But I'm like, what's the exact messaging about the white guy fell in the jungle? The animals couldn't train a black baby or anything. White baby who got sudden, and it's just colonialism right there. Then that's what it's telling you, and it's superiority in your face. And we loved it. We ate it up, and the black was inferior, and that's what they told you. And we ate it up, but the messaging, nobody questioned where it came from, who brought it. And then there's this book that I'm reading right now. I'm a big soccer fan, and it's about soccer. And it's talked about how the English Premier League with cable has taken over the whole of Africa, that even heads of states are all big fans of it, and they don't even invest money in Africa anymore. But the messaging, where is it coming from? Back in the 90s, there was investment in Africa for soccer. Every African country is soccer crazy. As soon as cable came into most countries, nobody's spending money. Nobody's creating jobs for the youth. And with the premiership in these countries, what's big? Gambling. There's gambling addiction now in the youth. But nobody talks about that. If you bring that question up, they say, oh, because I don't like the British Empire and all that, that's the way. We'll have that conversation. Anyway, we'll topic for another day. We'll have to move on. But that's why I said it's good that you caught on to the messaging, because that's where it begins. When you start to ask, where's the messaging coming from? Who's bringing the messaging? The same man who questioned, who made the racist comments about Obama and the towels, the 700 Club guy. Do you remember on Nigerian TV? He was always on. I don't know if by the time.
That guy, I know him.
He was always on Nigerian TV every day.
I know him.
Yeah, and so he has huge followers in Nigeria. But he was always making racist comments about Obama. Well, I grew up as a kid watching
that man
every day. But when you think that this guy is always saying racist things about black people in America,
they don't see him. They don't see him
in Nigeria.
At all.
Saying something
exactly.
And over
here,
so it's like two different worlds. People can't relate to that.
Exactly.
The message, bringing a different message over there, and so that's how they keep hitting. And then the people from there will come here and be like, no, you black people, you don't want to listen. You don't want
it's true.
They know the person who is. So why would they listen to the person? And then
it's true.
That's how the divide starts coming between African immigrants and
then black. Yes. Yes.
Unfortunately, we don't have the time to dive into that. So we
Mm.
have to move forward.
Okay.
So you went to college. So you started at Valdosta. And
Yes.
what made you switch to Texas? Because you ended up graduating in Texas, right?
I did. I did. My mom moved to Texas for a job, and I had left Valdosta already. I took a gap year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to go to Texas to be with her. And so I applied to a couple of schools out here to Baylor, well, not out here, I'm in Los Angeles now, but out there. And so I applied to Baylor and a couple other schools. And then I ended up going to the University of Texas at Dallas. Yes.
Oh, Dallas.
Yeah. It's a really good school. It's a
Yes.
school that I just felt really safe at and just really, it's actually a school that I ended up choosing last minute.
Okay.
Yeah, because my whole idea was that I was going to go to Baylor and I was going to be a lawyer and I was going to do this whole thing. But then, very last minute, I ended up going to UTD and I really, really, I'm glad I did. It's a wonderful school.
So you first had being a lawyer in mind. Were you being directed to go that route, or why lawyer?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, because I feel like a lot of like kids of Africa, well, kids of immigrants in general, and this is something that I really loved about going to UTD is that there's so many, the immigrant population at that school is huge. It's huge. There's so many, like, well, I guess the second generation
Mm-hmm.
population at that school is huge. And so the kids of immigrants at that school from India and places in Asia and Africa and just like places in Europe, it's so huge. And so I've met so many people at that school and had so many conversations with kids who are like, I'm doing something that like my parents just want me to do because like they feel like, they felt pressured
Hmm.
into, oh yeah. I ended up actually, one of my, because I was a sociology major, and in the master's program, which at some point I will finish because I have three more classes and I feel like I just want to finish it. And so I had the option to do either a thesis or a non-thesis track.
Yes.
And at some point I was thinking that for my thesis track, if I went that route, I was actually going to just conduct field research into like this topic of immigrants and their children and why a lot of immigrant children, like feel the pressure to do like things that they don't want to do and sort of the comorbidity like that can have with things like depression and stuff like that. Um, and so, and I ended up conducting a few interviews, and it was really insightful to have that happen. And I spoke with a lot of people who, yeah, like they just felt super pressured. So I can definitely speak to the fact that it's not just Nigerians,
Yep.
it's not just Africans.
Yes.
It's like Hispanic people, it's Indian people, Asian people. And I think that's one of the reasons I knew for me that I had to, and I'd always known that in a way. It's why I took my gap year before even going to that school. Um, but I think somewhere deep down that just sowed a seed for me to like do what I wanted to do with my life as opposed to like just, you know, doing what my mom wanted me to do, no matter how much I loved her, as much as she sacrificed for me, I was just seeing the effects that it was having on like other kids' lives.
Yeah.
And so it was very important because I'd seen it firsthand. I'd seen it firsthand in my life, and to see it happen in other kids' lives, I didn't want that to be me.
Yeah. Like if a guest on the podcast I brought up earlier, Israel, she had mentioned she's from Sweden, of Iraqi background, and she had pointed out that a lot of parents, it's a survival thing. and they just go with,
Yes.
we think this is the best path for you to not, end up to not struggle in life, which is understandable, but at the same time, it's still not considering your child's best
Mm-hmm.
interest, because everybody at the end of the day still has a passion. And to show how something like that, I thought I'd broken out of that mentality when I finally decided, when I finally ended up going to college, which I did after my years in the military. But the subconscious, it stays with you. It can stay with you, and if you don't unwire yourself completely, it's in the back of your mind. So I'd always wanted to go for communications. I don't know why, but uh, guess what? I'm doing podcasting. But I'd always wanted to study communications, or mass communications, as it was called in Nigeria. And then time for me to go to college here, and I was like, but do you make money? Do they get money? That was popped in my back of my head anytime I was trying to pick. And then guess what I picked? Business administration.
Wow.
And why did I pick it? I can't explain why I picked it, but I just picked that. It's like, okay, well, I would probably be out. They accept my military years of experience, and I'll be out of college. Bang, 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 and then that was it. And I got a degree that I don't even like.
Wow.
And now I can admit it. Then I thought my mom didn't have a say in my picking that degree, but the truth is that it is that thinking of it's when my mom heard I was studying for business administration. Oh yeah, she didn't say, oh, you should have studied for this or that. It fell into that category of, yeah, this is acceptable.
Uh-huh.
It's not like, so she wasn't worried. She didn't have to try to convince me about anything. So, but at the end of the day, why did I go for that degree? I can't tell you why.
Mm.
I mean, I don't regret. Like I studied, I met good people, I met great people, I learned some stuff, but I don't have a passion for that degree. It's not something I had a passion for. I still wish I went for my communications. I still wish I did that. And so at the end of the day, I tell my nephew when he was asking me about degrees and all that stuff, and I just say, what's your interest? What's the thing that you love doing? What's that dream that you've had? Just go for it, man. Go
Right.
for it. Don't be like me that
Right.
after a year, I'm like, why do I have this degree?
But
Because
you're still going for your dream, like you're still doing it. So hey.
I'm still pursuing other projects on the side, but and careers. But I just had to mention that because in a way, when you start hearing people, because a lot of people in communities talk about this is the fastest part. This part, this you guarantee jobs here. This one is guaranteed.
Exactly.
Guaranteed, and it's guaranteed.
Exactly.
Guaranteed. That word, guaranteed. You keep hearing it, and then it starts subconsciously staying with you, and then you're like, okay, I want to do this, and then, but who will hire you? Who is this? Who
And
is
it's
that?
not even true. It's not even true, Seth.
Later
Guarantee,
on, I start
guarantee,
meeting people
guarantee.
in New York. Oh, I studied English, but I have this great job and I love it, and I love this great career. And I'm like,
Exactly.
yeah, I could have been, I could have followed,
Exactly.
but the one who's following and is miserable, and I've known my friend who went with that path. He's of Indian background. He still
Exactly.
needs this job. He has a great job, great pay, but he's always complains. Every time I had to stop texting him because the amount of complaints. I'm like, oh man, where's your paycheck, though? Can I get your paycheck? Uh, yeah. So was it? So now you decided to go with your path, and so now you've had the awakening into blackness, and
Yes.
then you've now decided to go with your path. So was this also part of the beginning of accepting who you were as a woman and deciding to go into music and accepting yourself as you accept that you had a gift for music? Did all that start
Um,
lining up, or how did all that start coming into being?
wow. You know what? All that started to happen. kind of not at the same time, but in the same like I guess season,
Okay.
because I moved to California for the first time in 2012. And
Hmm.
so after I had gone to UTD, I'd seen everything that was going on. This was in 2012. After 1 year, I left. And so I left and I went to California.
Okay.
And I lived in California for a year, but then it wasn't quite what I expected it to be. And that's a whole long story that we can get into like another time. And it's just a whole other thing. But
What part of California is it? Where you are right now?
yeah, Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and honestly, it was just, I basically, and this actually, I want to tell you this because this is something that this stops a lot of people, and this has stopped a lot of people that I knew
Hmm.
who were my friends at UTD, where it's like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Honestly, as I got older, it stopped me. And I think because I was really young at that time, it didn't stop me. But not
Okay.
just because I was young. I had a lot of faith. Because when I moved to California that first time, I had no money. I moved here with $0. It's that story that you hear of people moving here with no money. I
Yes.
did that.
Hmm.
I did that. And so it's like I bought only the bus ticket that I had. I was on the Greyhound for 3 days, and I had like, a script at that time. And I came here because when I first moved to America, I knew that I'm going to win American Idol and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But then I had, someone in my family, she told me, she said, you can sing, but you're not a singer. And so it was a very sort of like underhanded way to just sort of like, I don't know, it just kill my spirit or my
Yep.
dream or something. And from that day, I just stopped believing in myself as a singer. But I was like, oh, I still want to do something creative. So maybe I'll do fashion. Maybe I'll do, And so, for example, in New York over there, you guys have the Parsons School of Design. I got into Parsons twice. I just never went. Like my mom never let me. And so a lot of things happened. Just so many things happened. But with California, I was just so determined. I was like, I was writing at that point. So I was like, I'm just going to go. I'm going to find my thing and I'm going to figure it out. And I just came here with $0. But, God helped me out along the way. And I was fine. I was never like, people could look at it and say, oh, because I lived in a shelter or this or whatever. I never thought that I was homeless at all because I was super comfortable the whole time and I was fine. But then I ended up going back to school in 2013. And I had the opportunity through the programs that I was in like the shelter programs. And it was through the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center, actually. And actually, this ties perfectly into the story. And so when I was in the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center that year of coming to California, that was the first time I'd ever in my whole life met a transgender person. I had never, ever before that met a transgender person. I met gay people before, but I don't know that I had like befriended. Actually, no, that's not true. I befriended gay people, but it was the first time I think I had opened up myself to like just accepting, like, it was weird. It was weird. Because I prayed, but this is another thing too. There was just so much conflict from a spiritual perspective and a Christian perspective of
Yeah.
like LGBT and God and all of this. And I was so young and there was just so much conflict. And so the fact that like I came to Los Angeles with $0 and the place that God used to help me and sustain me for a year was a place called the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center. Like no one could take that away from me. Like no one could take that away from me because like you did not you, but like they didn't help me, you know. And so someone was looking at me and telling me like, God hates, you know, this, God hates that, God hates this. When I was here and there was a possibility for my head to hit the concrete for me to sleep at night, a place called the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center helped me. Gay and lesbian and transgender people helped me. Like they helped me. Like gay, lesbian, and transgender Christian people, Black people, white people, Hispanic people, whatever people, Muslim people, Buddhist people, like they helped me. And so that was the first time that I really expanded, like as a person. It opened my heart up, and like I think I really started to accept myself as like something other than like that's something that like someone that God could love, you
Yes.
know. Like that was just the first time, because I'm like, moving here could have really been a mess. It could have really been a mess. I could have been like, I could have died. I could have been killed. Like anything could have happened, you know. Like it could have been a mess, but like I was like saved, and you know, he just really helped me. And yeah, and so I went back to Texas, went back to school. And when I went back to school, I remember sitting outside once, and the whole time I'd been writing songs, because even the script that I brought out here was a script about two people trying to make a band together. They were trying to start a band together, and you know, they like I wrote songs for it, and I wrote like things for it, and so even when I wasn't doing music, I was always trying to find ways to sneak music into my life. I was always like writing songs or just sneaking music into ways in my life. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not good enough to sing the music, then I'll just write the music for other people, or I'll write something where, you know, like they can sing the songs, or I'll write a story and I'll write like a musical or something like that. And so when I got back from LA and went to school, I was working on more songs, and I was singing one of them outside, and I hit a random note. In retrospect, it probably sounded horrible, but I hit that note, and it just made me feel, I just thought to myself, am I a good singer? Like, it just was like, yeah, it was the first time that I just thought, I was like, am I a good singer? And that was the first time that I really kind of just thought to myself, like, can I, I mean, and I think it was very important for me to think that. I think it was very, very important for me to think that. And I just asked myself that, like, am I a good singer? And I just decided that day, you know, I just decided, I said, you know what, this is the day that I'm going to decide that I can sing, or that I'm going to learn how to, because I want to. And so after that day, every day I put everything into it. Where I lived in my dorms, there was a stairwell that had great acoustics. And so all the time I would go underneath that stairwell, and I would just sing. I would sing there for hours, just about every day. I thought, I was like, oh, one day when I have an EP, I'm going to name it the Stairwell Sessions, because like that's where I'm like, that's where I learned to develop my voice. And so it's like, I would just sing there all the time, and I would write and write and write and write. And I have like hundreds and hundreds of just recordings on like different phones. I've like maxed out different phones of just like, you know, over the years of just from 2013 to now to 20. And so we're looking at a 6 to 7 year period of just me like developing as a vocalist. And it's not, you know, it's been that consistent of a stretch of time, you know, over time. Yeah, so it's been that consistent of a stretch of time over time. And my belief in myself has grown. It hasn't been linear at all.
Yeah.
But it has definitely lasted from then till now. In that amount of time, I haven't been in the studio yet, because in that amount of time, like I began my transition. Well, I'll tell you about my transition as well. So in 2014, I was growing as a singer. And then in 2015, that was sort of the year. I think, yeah, I think 2015 was when the Marriage Equality Act was passed. It might have been 2015 or 14. I think it's 14.
I think 14.
Yeah, 14. And so after that was passed, everybody was sort of like, oh my God, you can get married now, you can get married now. And all my friends were so happy for me. And I just remember vividly thinking, no, I can't. Like, I can't. Because to me, I couldn't get married to a man as a man. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. And I didn't understand why. And so I think the passing of the Marriage Equality Act really kind of like started my transition, because I was so happy for everybody else and I didn't understand why. Because I was like, I should be happy for myself.
Yeah.
I can get married in my country now. But I was so happy for everybody else, and I was like, I don't get it, you know? I was like, it's not the type of ring I want to wear. I don't want to wear a suit at my wedding. I don't want this at my wedding. I don't want to marry a man, but I want to marry a man. I was like, I just, you know, it was so confusing to me. There were just so many things I didn't understand. And I would always try to like rationalize it. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll wear a caftan at my wedding. And it's like, okay, fine. Right. I was like, oh, maybe I'll wear a caftan. I'm like, well, you know, who knows? I'll get married in like 20, whatever. And like, people are going to be more liberal. And so like, I can wear a caftan and something cute. Cause I'm like, I wasn't the type of person who like wore dresses or whatever. And so not to say that anything's wrong with that, but I just didn't like cross dress. And so I was like, maybe I'll wear a caftan. And I was like, but I'm like, that's not even me. I had a very clear understanding, at least of who I was. Maybe not a deep understanding, but a clear understanding. And so, yeah, maybe not, I think I should write that down somewhere to remind myself that maybe I didn't have a deep understanding of who I was, but I had a clear understanding of who I was. I was like, yeah, I know who I am. It might not be too deep, but I'm pretty sure I might know who I am. And so I just figured, I'm like, I'm not going to get married. I'm just going to adopt some children, and that's going to be it. If they'll let me adopt them, I'll adopt them. And then I started learning on YouTube about what it meant to be transgender. And then the light bulb went off. And I said, that's it. I said, I'm that. And I remember I had, right before I moved to California anyway, and it's funny because I had met people who were trans, but it still
met
didn't,
them in LA, right? That was your first time. Okay.
Yeah, but it still didn't click for me because I thought what trans meant. The first time I'd ever seen or heard trans was actually on America's Next Top Model. There was a model who was trans. Her name is Isis King. And that actually set, because visibility is so important. And this is one of the reasons I think visibility of all kinds, Raphael, I think visibility of all kinds, and this actually leads me to the show that we're going to talk about, hopefully. I think visibility of all kinds is important because the first time I saw her was in America's Next Top Model, and that was the first time I ever saw a transgender person. And as wonderful as that was, it led me to think that being trans was only for people like that. And so, yeah. And so I thought that, for example, you had to like be, so you've seen what I look like. And so I thought you had to be like super skinny and like have super feminine or fine aesthetics. And you had to have like the softest skin and the smallest features and a small nose and be waif-like and, you know, have tiny fingers and everything. Like you had to basically be almost a girl. And then they were just going to give you like a tiny pill and it would be like, poof, you're like there now. And so like, that's what I thought, because she was basically like, you know, she was on a show about models. And so she was like basically.
It was back to the messaging again.
Yes, exactly. And so she was on a show about models. And, they're like, oh, I'm a transgender woman, da, 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 da. But I was like, she's so gorgeous and she's so skinny and she's so pretty. And then when I went to LA, of all the places to first meet transgender people, my God, Los Angeles, like everybody that I was meeting was like a swimsuit, like ready person and a swimsuit, like, I remember meeting this girl named Dominique, and she was just every single day was a runway walk, and it was perfect, and it was just, she was ready. And so I think it's so important to see people who look like normal representations. And what is normal even? But who look kind of like, who represent like a full spectrum of what it's like to live and to be present out here. And so I think what that looks like is, for me, part of why I want to be on this show, Making the Band, is like in the music industry, as far as a Black, transgender, dark-skinned, fat or plus size woman, there's nothing like that in pop music or R&B or rock or anything. There's nothing. There's a white, skinny, transgender girl in pop. Her name is Kim Petras, and she's lovely and gorgeous and has a beautiful, beautiful voice. But as far as like someone like me, and I do think that, well, I don't want to say I do think, like, I don't want a situation, how do I phrase this? I would be remiss if I didn't do the best I could to maximize this opportunity so that a girl like me could see herself represented in that space as well. I'll say that. I would be remiss if I didn't do that, because if the only girl who's represented next is just like a tan version of Kim Petras, that would be disappointing, And so it's like, you know what I mean?
I get it.
And so we have now Kim, she's trans, and then she's white, she's skinny, and so she's basically just a white girl but trans, and so then she gets to like be this, symbol.
It's still the same. It's not,
but
it's
still
like almost the same kind of picture we've still been getting.
Exactly.
It doesn't portray representation like
no. And so whether you're watching America's Next Top Model, or you're meeting Dominique in Los Angeles, or you're listening to Kim's music, you're thinking like, oh, like that's what a trans person is, and so I can't be trans. Because for me, not until I met Dominique in 2013, I believe, and not until 2 years later in 2015 did I think like I could be trans, because I was like, no, I'm not skinny, my features aren't small, my skin isn't as soft as she is. Like there were so many, I was like, I'm not anything close to that. And they were like, I hope you know it takes a process to get there. And a lot of people get, this done and that. And I was like, no, you have to be this and you have to look like, and they were like, no. And then for me to go on YouTube and watch videos, there's, categories of videos called timeline videos to see what people went from to what they became.
Yeah.
I would watch videos of people going from, like Raphael looking like you to like looking like Naomi Campbell. And I would be stunned, because I'd be like, oh my God. And that's what gave me the confidence to like actually begin my process. And so it's kind of like singing, because all I needed was to hear that one note. All I needed was to see that one photo of somebody who looked like me, who became something else, to be like, can I do this too? Yes. And I think that's what's necessary, is for some girl to like, see somebody who, like Lizzo, she's doing that now, for a lot of people, but Lizzo isn't transgender. And I think that that's very important, to have someone like me. And I want to be that person, to be in that space, to say, hey, I'm doing this so that I'm doing this because you can do it too. Like the moment that I figured I could do this too, it became super important. Like other people know they can do this too. Like, to just have kind of like a slightly darker version of what we already have, that would be so disappointing. Like let's have something that's, like visibly different, visibly representative of like, like the hair that looks like yours, skin that looks like yours, that feels like yours, a voice that like has your tonality, but not quite like yours because yours is different and we want yours here too as well. And so that's kind of what my whole vibe is about.
And there's nothing wrong with having that vibe out there. I say it. So um, I have to ask two more questions, I believe. And
Please. Thank you for giving me the time and the space, everything.
So it's beautiful that you brought up the visibility, and yeah, it's very important because, I mean, even for men, we all started with look at the superhero spectrum.
Right.
We
Right.
all like for how many years was all white, and then
Right.
wait a minute. What, is there only white boys that can be superheroes or white men that can be
Exactly.
started clicking that there could be black boys too. What if a black? Because I remember when my nephew asked me one day, he wanted to be a Superman in Port Harcourt. I said, yeah, if you try to be a Superman, you try to fly in Nigeria, you're gonna get electrocuted because of the electric wires. I was wrong because I could probably kill this dream of being a superhero, but
Oh
that's the
no.
Nigerian reality. But what did I know then? I was pretty much young and stupid too. So, but that was the mindset because there was no superhero existing in our space then. But now we have Nigerian comic publishers with Nigerian comic book characters existing.
Nice.
Unlike back when in the my big, he's like a big bro to me, had comic books, and his mom had him beat up by her church because she didn't understand why an older kid was still reading comics, and had the church cast out the demons of comics from his body.
Wow.
Story, but I'll bring it up again one day. So
Now what?
representation is important, and so it cuts across so many fields, and because we were so limited in just the fields and the dreams we could have. Only sports, only doctor, only accountant, only lawyer, only that's only as far as people could see. They couldn't see that you could exist in so many ways. You could aspire, you could dream to be so many things. But
Yeah.
because they were not used to seeing anyone who wasn't black in those fields, or anyone who wasn't brown in that uniform or in that job, then they say, why do you want to be that person? Why should somebody be in that field? But it takes someone representing in that category for others to dream to be there. If they don't see a black astronaut, why would kids want to be an astronaut? Brown
Exactly.
astronaut, why would brown kids want to be an astronaut? So it's the same thing. If we don't see a trans astronaut, why will other kids dream of, if all these things matter. And that's why representation cuts across all aspects. So with that being said, I don't know if you've heard about this podcast, Afro Queer Podcast. It's a podcast.
I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, I recommend it to you. They touch about the Afro queer community in Africa.
Yeah, I only saw it in in the notes that you sent.
Yeah, I started listening to it recently. I hope they'll bring their second season back. I hope I can get the hosts on this podcast.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And so, are you familiar with the Afro queer community in Africa? Do you foresee any hope for the community?
But I'm only familiar with it as far as like the things that we need to change.
Okay.
In places like Uganda, in places like I know Jamaica is not part of Africa, but places like Jamaica,
Yeah,
Uganda is like for sure, like,
add it to the
you
Afro.
know, before we even start talking about Uganda and Jamaica, places like Nigeria, we need to change specific things as well because, the fact that people can be jailed still, the fact that people can be publicly humiliated and beaten for being queer or gay. Um, and sometimes, in these places, I don't know, because not all the listeners may be exposed to how they do certain things, in these African countries or Nigeria. But sometimes they'll put tire around somebody, and you know what that means,
Yes,
Uh-huh.
that's a
And so,
that's a dead sentence.
uh-huh, uh-huh. And so, it's like if that's what people are resorting to because a person is just trying to express themselves fully, then we have a lot of work to do. We have so much work to do. And if I can be part of that process in any way, I feel like I'm the kind of person who, when I was younger, I would always jump at the opportunity to say, oh, I want to do that. I want to be part of that process. I want to be part of the change. But now I'm very mindful to say, oh, I want to be part of the change and I want to do that. Because as much as I want to, and I do want to, I understand that it comes at great cost and great risk.
Yes.
Because to go to Nigeria, for example, like, if I became or whoever or whatever, and to go to Nigeria and say we have to pass some sort of legislation that, outlaws this kind of thing. If you guys have any sort of respect for my music or what it is that I'm doing, for example, if I had because as artists, we have a lot of clout sometimes. And to say oh, if you people want me to come here and perform a show, there's some things that you guys are gonna have to do. One of the things I realized as well is that if I had to go back home to Nigeria, I have a Nigerian passport though, but if I had to go back home to Nigeria, I would have to get a visa because I changed my name.
Yes.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Because Nigeria does not have the process like America to update everything. And it's not because they don't have the process, but because to them, they will not even look at it as if is like what do you mean?
Yeah.
And America changed my name, my gender, I'm everything. And if I was born here, they would even change the birth certificate. Everything. But birth certificate cannot change because it's from Nigeria, which is fine, and people have their own opinions about certain things. But now, for me to go back home to Nigeria, I have to collect visa. So I have to get visa on my American passport. And so when someone asks me, oh, are you a Nigerian? I'm like, no, you go and ask Nigerians if I'm a Nigerian. Don't ask me, ask them. Ask them. Do they want me to be a Nigerian? Ask them. If they will not even allow me to use my own passport from the place that I was born, if I cannot use that passport, don't ask me if I'm Nigerian. Go and ask my country. Yeah. And so, because sometimes it's oh, I'm just supposed to be this, blind patriot.
Yes.
No.
That's the thing.
It's no, I'm not going to be a blind patriot for Nigeria, and I'm not going to be a blind patriot for America. No. I'm going to be a responsible citizen for either place.
Yep.
And so if it means that, okay, fine, if I have, a great artistic platform that says I can go to Nigeria and perform a show and something, they will let me come inside and stuff. Because even places like Dubai, if you're transgender and stuff like that, they will not let you enter inside. There's videos on YouTube of people that they're denying them entry into Dubai, or they're detaining them there at the airport. They're detaining them there.
I wasn't aware of that.
Maybe I'll email you one. I'll email you.
Okay.
When we finish, I'll email you a video.
All right.
And so when I get real passionate, like my accent starts coming out.
It's okay. It's
I'm
okay.
telling you, or when I get real passionate and I'm comfortable with the person, it starts coming out. If I'm not like comfortable, I'll still just like you won't even know. But if I am, like it will start coming out because it's like, you know, like places like Dubai, but it's like okay, Dubai and all. Like me, I can't fix everything, but the
Oh,
place where I can fix something, okay, then I will try to do that one. But I remember the day it hit me, I was like, oh my god, if I want to go home, Steph, I can't even go. I have to look for visa to go
mm,
back home. Because one day I was like, well, I'm tired though. Let me go and buy ticket and start going home. And it hit me. I was like, I can't even go.
mm,
I
okay.
can't go. And I was like, wow. I have to look for visa. And the visa self can be denied
Yeah.
because they will say, it can't, no, it can't because they will say, okay, who are you? Where are you coming from? Da, 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 da. And
As
so
far
I
as you're
can't
not
even,
bringing a large amount of dollars, that's where it boils.
exactly. I can't even apply for visa as like a former Nigerian citizen. I have to apply for visa as if they don't know me before.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? But
Well,
that's the kind of thing where it's like we have to. If I ever get a chance to go there, like and do something, I will even start with this one. I will just start with at least let's know let's just allow people to be safe, please.
yes.
Don't put people inside prison for smash me. And that's nonsense to the listeners who don't know. Like just don't put people in prison for nonsense.
Well, I'll
Or
say this though. I know I'm not in Nigeria and I'm not in Africa, but my contribution is to continue to let people know, like I've been
and that's
telling people
huge.
that
That's huge.
it,
Information is everything.
I've met gay people. I was once transphobic. I was once I was more homophobic than transphobic. By the time I started meeting trans people, I was already out of the homophobic phase.
Yeah.
But how we were raised, especially if you were
Yeah.
raised in church, like if you meet
Yeah.
homosexual is straight to hellfire. Straight to hellfire.
Exactly.
It's one way ticket. It's straight. There's no come out. Then I find out that there's somebody in the family that's gay, and then the prayer starts changing. That person, Jesus will save that person, but the rest straight to hell. But why am I saving one, and then I can't? You can save one person, and then the rest are all straight to hellfire. What about everybody? Can we just change everybody? And then there were two ladies who were expelled from, I think, Owerri University, Futo, and
Wow.
they were caught making out, and that was the only crime. They were caught making out, and they got expelled. And I was arguing with my friend who had a reputation for dating married men, and when their wives would come look for her, she would take off, who would cover for her. And she was like, "Oh, they should have locked them up and all these sinners and this." I was like, "Girl, we are the ones that cover for you. Anytime married women come here looking for you and you take off. So aren't you a sinner too? I don't see what crime those ladies committed. They were above the age of 18, so they're adults. Who did they sin against?" And she was like, "How dare you? How dare you defend them? You must be gay." I said, "I don't understand. How am I gay? Just because I said two adults were making out. If yourself and a man were making out in a car on a university ground, the university you attend, and they find you making out and then they expel you, does that mean you committed a crime against the university? Do they expel you?" And that's how we stopped being friends, because of that argument, and yeah, and stuff like that. They just and I was still homophobic because there was still stuff that I still went against, but just stuff like that. But back then, we just the wiring just started, unwiring little by little. And by the time I will meet a gay person, I'll walk with a gay person. It just didn't make sense for me to say, "Oh, I can't tolerate you anymore." I couldn't. It just didn't make sense to me anymore. Like, we can. I don't see you as I see you as a human being. That's all I saw. If you don't
Thank you.
if you don't do the job we're supposed to do right, then I don't want you around me. But if you can do the
Yeah.
job you have to do, you are cool. And that's how when people came like, oh, why is this guy here? I don't like him. Why don't you like him? There's something about him that what is it? Well, there's something. What is it? There's something. What is the something? There's and the way he walks. What is your business with the way he walks? Can he do the job or not? I don't know why you not worried about the way he walks. Why are you looking at the way he walks? You say you're not gay, but you're looking at the way he walks. Why you paying attention? Man, what the hell are you talking about, man? Shut up. And so stuff like that. But anyway, that's how I just got out of it, and I was like, it didn't make sense to me. Why am I, if I'm not homophobic, if I don't have to go start digging in. If I'm not in the closet, then why am I digging into all these avenues? Why am I going in there? If I have to live my life, I'm living my life. And that's how I started having gay friends. And by the time I met a trans woman, it didn't make. I took photos with her. It was her birthday. I didn't even know she was trans. And by the time someone was telling me, oh, that's a trans woman, I said, oh, nice to meet you. But I already
Right.
took photos with her like 30 minutes earlier. So it wasn't like, oh, my goodness, I took a photo with you. Oh, God, I'll take the photo.
Some people are like that, though. Some
Yeah, of
people are
course,
like that.
we still had to leave the party because some of my friends that came with me were like, yeah, I had to let them know like this is what was going on. So
Yeah.
we're like, yeah, let's get out. So but anyway, we'll spend a lot of time on this. We have to do a part 2 after you've been selected for meeting the band, and you start your tour. Hopefully, you come back on the podcast and.
Oh, please, of course. I would love that.
So, last question. Do you have a word of advice you'd like to leave the audience with? Something from either a quote from a song or a quote someone has given you or something? Just anything that you just like to leave the audience with.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Word of advice. Something. Oh, yes. Okay. This is something that I got from a therapist.
Okay.
And it's something that I actually use in my life every day, every opportunity that I get, and it helps me. And it's very simple. Make no meaning. Make no meaning. Make no meaning. Make no meaning. And that applies in so many ways because we walk through life and things happen and we try to make meaning of it. Okay, this happened and because this happened, this means this. Because that happened, this means that. Because da 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 da. And we try to spin everything into this big, and that's not our job. That's not our job. And so it's like when I started practicing that, this year is the first year I really started practicing that. I've seen it happen in my life in so many ways because I remember this year I got this letter, this notice. And normally if I get a notice like that, hey, it's finished. I would have been screaming like, oh my God, this means this means that, like immigration, this, immigration, that. And I just said to myself, make no meaning. And so I responded to the notice and they just said, oh, and I went there. I was terrified. I was completely terrified, everything. And I went there and they said, oh, we're sorry. We just send that to everyone every year. Sorry.
Oh,
Finished.
Yeah.
End of story. End of story.
I like that.
And because sometimes, we see something on the road is a sign. We see another thing is another sign, especially, superstitious Africans.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, if you touch money from the ground, you will turn to a cow.
Yeah.
Or you will turn to yam, or this one. And then when they cut the yam, blood will come out. And so it's just all these things that, like, we've learned since we were little. We've just learned, like, even if we don't believe those things anymore, we've learned to make a meaning of everything. And so everything has a meaning. The TV didn't on the first time. God doesn't want you to watch TV. What if the TV did not on? you know?
Ah,
And so it's just like, just make no meaning. Just
yeah,
make no meaning.
make no meaning. I like
Yeah.
I like that. All right, to finally wrap it up, do you have any plugins that you'd like to leave the audience with? Anywhere they can find you or follow you?
Yes. My Instagram handle is at O So Mary, and that's OHSO and Mary, like Merry Christmas. That's my best bet. And if you go there and see my singing videos, if you would please, please, please tag the TV show Making the Band or Diddy. Everyone knows him. That's like P. Diddy. And so just tag Diddy and tag Making the Band under my songs, the videos of me singing. And that's just OHSO Merry, like Merry Christmas.
Okay. All right. I can't thank you enough, Joy, for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. This was fantastic.
Oh, the honor and joy is all mine. Well, your name again. Well, it's always fun to say Joy. So,
Oh, yay.
and shout out to Kevin for making.
Oh, right. Shout out to Kevin and to Lake. Lake is his partner, so shout out to her as well.
Yes, I met her once while in Texas. So
she was my teacher at UTD, actually.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Kevin was
so
my
one
teacher
of
down in Texas too. I was at straight. Yeah, we've been good friends.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you for the privilege of your company. See you at the next episode. Thanks for listening to White Label American. If you enjoy the show, we'll appreciate if you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. If you have any questions, comments, or have someone who will be a good guest on the show, or you want to be on the show, send us a message at whitelabelamerican@gmail.com. And make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at White Label American. Thank you for your support.